The stars stretched infinitely before him, cold and unyielding, a canvas of pinpricks that seemed to mock the life teeming on the fragile worlds they overlooked. Admiral Zalrith stood motionless at the observation deck of the Zenthri dreadnought Valkyrin, his four black eyes narrowing as Earth's pale blue came into view. This unassuming planet had, over recent years, begun to defy the natural order, its inhabitants clawing their way into galactic awareness with unsettling speed. To Zalrith, a veteran of the Dominion's greatest campaigns, it was an anomaly, one that required careful study, if not outright elimination. Behind him, the hum of the dreadnought's systems provided a constant rhythm to his thoughts. Zalrith was not one for sentimentality or idle curiosity. Decades of war had taught him that curiosity often led to vulnerability. Yet the humans intrigued him. Primitive by Zenthri standards, they possessed an irreverent tenacity, adapting to challenges that should have obliterated them long ago. His advisors had presented conflicting reports. Some deemed Earth inconsequential. Others warned of latent potential. Zalrith, ever the pragmatist, decided to see for himself. "Admiral," a deep voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Commander Trellick, his second-in-command. Trellick, younger and less scarred by war, still carried the stiffness of one eager to prove himself. "The humans have responded to our inquiries. They claim their youngest possess a capacity for tactical thought far beyond what we anticipated." "Children," Zalrith replied, his voice heavy with skepticism. "The humans seek to impress us with their offspring. They provided access to a visual demonstration," Trellick said, his tone betraying a hint of amusement. "A human child engaging with what they call a Starship simulator. It is said to be a reflection of their strategic training." Zalrith turned, his imposing frame casting a long shadow across the dimly lit room. "A game," he stated flatly. "Yes, Admiral," Trellick admitted, though there was an edge of caution in his voice now. "But they insist it is more than mere entertainment. It is said to embody their approach to warfare." A low growl emanated from Zalrith's throat, a sound that made even Trellick stiffen. He had seen too many species use theatrics to compensate for weakness. Still, dismissing a potential threat outright was a mistake he would not repeat. "Show me." The display panel flickered to life, and a small, dimly lit room on Earth came into view. At its center sat the human child. Zalrith's eyes narrowed as he took in the figure. A boy, no older than 10 cycles by their measure, with messy brown hair and a face too smooth to have known hardship. He sat before a glowing screen, fingers darting across a console with precision and speed. The simulation displayed a digital battlefield, a vast void dotted with fleets of ships clashing in an intricate dance of chaos and order. Zalrith observed in silence as the boy's fleet maneuvered. At first glance, it appeared disorganized, his ships scattering like frightened prey before the enemy's advance. But then, almost imperceptibly, patterns began to emerge. Ships shifted into formations, baiting the enemy into overextending. Smaller vessels were sacrificed to protect larger, more critical assets. Each loss seemed calculated, each movement purposeful. The boy's face remained calm, his eyes flickering between displays as he issued commands. He was outnumbered and outgunned, yet he was winning. The enemy fleet faltered, caught off guard by the boy's feints and ambushes. A decisive strike took out the opposing flagship, and the simulation ended in a cascade of triumphant lights. Zalrith's claws tapped against the metal console as he processed what he had just witnessed. "He is playing," he said at last, though his voice carried no derision. It was an observation, a statement of fact. And yet, there is method in his chaos. "Indeed," Trellick said, his tone quieter now. "It seems their children learn to think strategically from a young age. If this is a mere game, what does it say of their actual capabilities?" Zalrith didn't respond immediately. His mind churned with possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. For the Zenthri, war was an art perfected over millennia. It was a discipline taught through pain and sacrifice, a trial that forged commanders from the fires of conflict. Yet here was a species where even the untested young could display such mastery, instinctual, unrefined, but undeniably effective. The child leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms with the casualness of someone unaware they had just simulated the destruction of a fleet. For a moment, Zalrith envied that innocence. The boy could not understand the implications of his skill, the ripples it would send through the cold calculus of galactic politics. To the Zenthari, strength was a language spoken through action, and this child had spoken volumes. "Commander," Zalrith said, his tone sharp enough to break Trellick's lingering silence. "Ensure this is not an anomaly. Observe other human children if necessary. I want to know if this aptitude is widespread." "Yes, Admiral," Trellick replied, bowing slightly before departing to carry out the order. Zalrith turned back to the observation deck, his gaze fixed on Earth. For the first time in many cycles, he felt a sensation he could not easily categorize. It was not fear. Zenthari warriors did not fear, but a gnawing unease. He had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, had orchestrated the destruction of worlds that dared to challenge the Dominion. Yet these humans, with their fragile bodies and unrefined technology, defied expectation at every turn. The child's face lingered in his mind, a haunting reminder of humanity's potential. Zalrith knew the weight of what he had seen. If this was their future, Earth would either become the Dominion's greatest ally or its most formidable adversary. He had yet to decide which path to take, but one thing was certain: humanity could no longer be ignored. For now, he would watch, he would wait, and he would prepare. The stars were vast, but even the smallest light could cast a shadow across the galaxy. The air in the small room was tense, though Lucas didn't seem to notice. His hands moved across the alien console with growing familiarity, his eyes scanning the glowing symbols as if he had been born to decipher them. To him, this was just another game, a challenge, sure, but nothing to fear. To everyone else, it was far more than that. In the corner, Commander Trellick stood stiffly, his angular frame towering over the human observers who had gathered to witness the test. His dark, reflective eyes shifted between Lucas and the console, his expression unreadable but his presence unmistakably imposing. On a holographic projection that dominated the far wall, Admiral Zalrith observed from his flagship, his 4 eyes fixed intently on the boy. Even through the shimmering image, the weight of the Admiral's presence filled the room. "Explain the parameters again," Zalrith commanded, his voice like a low growl that reverberated through the room. His Zenthari advisors stood behind him, murmuring softly among themselves, their skepticism palpable. "The test replicates a scenario commonly used to train our command initiates," Trellick replied without turning away from the screen. "The simulation is set within a hostile sector. Lucas will command a fleet comparable in size to our second-tier officers' first deployment trials. His opponent will be the Epsilon Protocol AI, a strategic intelligence designed to mimic the tactics of seasoned Zenthari commanders." Zalrith's image tilted slightly, as though he were inspecting the boy more closely. "And this child is expected to prevail?" "Not expected," Trellick said, his tone careful. "But we shall see how he performs." Lucas remained oblivious to the tension in the room. His father, Captain Ryan Blake, stood just behind him, his arms crossed and his jaw clenched. A decorated veteran of Earth's nascent space force, Ryan had spent his life preparing for humanity's uncertain place in the stars. Yet nothing had prepared him for this. Watching his 10-year-old son take command in a trial that could determine Earth's future, he wanted to stop it, to demand that this burden not rest on Lucas's shoulders, but he knew it was too late. The Zenthari had issued the challenge, and Lucas had accepted it with an ease that bordered on arrogance. "Are you ready, Lucas?" Ryan asked, his voice low but steady. Lucas grinned, his boyish confidence unwavering. "Ready as I'll ever be." The simulation began without fanfare. The holographic display shifted to reveal a sprawling battlefield, a 3-dimensional map of stars and debris fields. Lucas's fleet materialized on one side, a mix of smaller corvettes, medium-sized frigates, and a single capital ship. Opposite him, the Epsilon Protocol's fleet loomed, larger and more heavily armed. The AI wasted no time, its ships moving with terrifying precision as they closed the distance. Lucas's hands flew across the console, issuing commands with a mix of instinct and strategy. His corvettes spread out, forming a loose perimeter that probed the enemy's movements. The frigates hung back, shields up, ready to intercept. The capital ship, a lumbering behemoth bristling with firepower, remained at the center, a fortress in the void. At first, it seemed chaotic, even desperate. Lucas's fleet darted and weaved, never committing to an engagement. The corvettes danced just out of range, drawing fire and scattering before the enemy could focus. The Zenthari observers whispered among themselves, unimpressed. To them, it was the erratic behavior of an inexperienced commander. But Zalrith saw it differently. His eyes narrowed as he watched the boys' movements, the subtle patterns emerging from the chaos. Each feint, each retreat, served a purpose. Lucas was testing the AI, baiting it into revealing its tactics. The corvettes were expendable, pawns in a larger game, and Lucas played them without hesitation. He's sacrificing his outer ships, one of the Zenthari advisors muttered, disapproving. Sloppy. No, Zalrith corrected, his voice cutting through the room. It's deliberate. He's gathering data. As if on cue, Lucas's strategy shifted. The corvettes that had survived regrouped, their movements more coordinated now. The frigates moved forward, forming a shield wall that absorbed the brunt of the enemy's fire. And then, in a move that caught even the AI off guard, Lucas's capital ship surged ahead, its massive cannons firing in calculated bursts. The enemy fleet, momentarily exposed, faltered. Lucas didn't hesitate. He directed his frigates to flank, cutting off the AI's retreat routes. The corvettes, battered but not broken, darted in for hit-and-run attacks, drawing fire away from the larger ships. The capital ship pressed the advantage, its guns carving through the enemy's formation. Trellick's mandibles twitched, a subtle sign of surprise. He's adapting. Faster than anticipated. Ryan couldn't hide a faint smirk, though his eyes never left the screen. He's been doing this since he was 6. The only difference is the stakes. The battle raged on, the holographic display a chaotic symphony of light and motion. The AI, relentless and unyielding, adjusted its tactics, countering Lucas's maneuvers with brutal efficiency. It deployed kamikaze drones, sacrificing its own ships to punch holes in Lucas's defenses. The boys' fleet wavered, his frigates taking heavy losses. But Lucas didn't panic. His hands moved faster, his command sharper. He repositioned his remaining ships, drawing the AI into a dense asteroid field. The larger enemy vessels struggled to navigate the terrain, their movements sluggish. Lucas exploited the terrain with surgical precision, setting ambushes and luring the AI into traps. One by one, the enemy ships fell, until only the AI's flagship remained. The final moments were a blur of motion. Lucas directed his capital ship into a head-on charge, its guns blazing. The enemy flagship returned fire, its shields glowing red-hot as it absorbed the onslaught. Lucas's corvettes swarmed in, targeting weak points in the flagship's hull. And then, with a final, devastating volley, the enemy flagship exploded in a blinding flash of light. The room fell silent. The simulation ended, the battlefield dissolving into darkness. Lucas leaned back in his chair, breathing hard but grinning. "That was awesome," he said, his voice breaking the tension. Zalritha's holographic image loomed larger, his expression unreadable. For a long moment he said nothing, his gaze fixed on the boy. Finally he spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of his words. "The boy is formidable," he admitted, each syllable measured. "But this was only a test. The true question remains. Is humanity an ally to be cultivated, or a threat to be extinguished?" Ryan stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "That's up to you, Admiral. But if you think today was impressive, You haven't seen what we're truly capable of. Zalritha's image flickered, his expression inscrutable. We shall see, Captain. We shall see. The transmission ended, leaving the room in silence once more. Lucas turned to his father, his grin unwavering. Did I pass? Ryan ruffled his son's hair, a rare smile breaking through his stern demeanor. You did more than that, kid. You showed them what it means to be human. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant, but on this small blue planet, a spark had been lit. A spark that would soon ignite across the galaxy. The vast emptiness of space surrounded the Valkyrin as it lingered on the edge of the Sol system, its engines dormant and its crew silent. Inside the command chamber, Admiral Zalrith stood with his arms clasped behind him, his four eyes fixed on a rotating hologram of Earth. The planet spun slowly, its delicate atmosphere casting a faint glow. It was a fragile world, by all measures insignificant, a pale blue dot amidst the stars. And yet, for the first time in centuries, Zalrith felt the weight of uncertainty. The humans show promise. Commander Trellick began cautiously, his tone betraying the tension he tried to mask. The boy's performance in the test was unprecedented, but aptitude alone does not make a species formidable. Zalritha's gaze remained on the hologram, unblinking. Aptitude, he said slowly, his voice like a distant thunder, is the foundation of potential. It is raw, untamed, but it can be forged into something unstoppable. Behind them, the advisors murmured quietly, exchanging glances that conveyed their unease. The Zenthri Dominion had faced countless enemies across its long history. Some had been crushed effortlessly, their resistance little more than a passing inconvenience. Others had required prolonged campaigns, the cost measured in the blood of warriors and the ashes of conquered worlds. But humanity was different. It was not their technology, their resources, or even their numbers that posed a threat. It was their spirit, their refusal to yield, and their unrelenting drive to surpass their own limitations. Admiral, Trellick pressed, his mandibles twitching. What is our course of action? The Council expects a decision. Zalrith finally turned, his imposing frame casting long shadows across the chamber. And what would you advise, Commander? Trellick hesitated. He had served under Zalrith long enough to recognize the traps hidden within such questions. Humanity has potential, yes, he said carefully, but they are unrefined, scattered. They lack the discipline and cohesion of a true galactic power. If we act decisively, we can neutralize the threat before it matures. And yet, Zalrith countered, his voice calm but edged with steel. To crush them now would be to extinguish a flame that may one day illuminate the galaxy. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over the gathered Zenthri. Zalrith was not a sentimental leader. His decisions were guided by logic and necessity, not emotion. But even he could not deny the significance of what he had witnessed. Humanity was an enigma, reckless, unpredictable, but undeniably resilient. The boy, Lucas, was proof of that. In him, Zalrith had glimpsed not just a tactical mind, but the boundless potential of an entire species. As if summoned by his thoughts, the hologram shifted to display Lucas's face, his young features etched with determination. Zalrith studied the image, his expression unreadable. Tell me, Commander, he said at last, what do you see when you look at this child? Trellick hesitated again, caught off guard by the question. I see an anomaly, a prodigy, perhaps, but one child does not define an entire species. Doesn't it? Zalrith replied, his tone sharper now. What is a species if not the sum of its individuals? This boy is a reflection of humanity's spirit, their curiosity, their adaptability, their relentless drive to overcome. He is the spark, but the fire exists within all of them. Trellick shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how to respond. He had seen countless worlds burned, countless civilizations reduced to nothing. To him, humanity was just another challenge, another obstacle in the Dominion's path. But Zalritha's words planted a seed of doubt, a crack in the foundation of his certainty. "Prepare the emissaries," Zalrith commanded, his voice cutting through the silence. "We will initiate formal contact with Earth, offer them an alliance." The advisors stirred, their murmurs growing louder. "Admiral," one of them spoke up, his voice tinged with disbelief, "you would align the Dominion with these primitives? They are barely capable of interstellar travel. Their presence in the galaxy is a fluke, nothing more." Zalrith's gaze snapped to the advisor, his eyes blazing. "And yet they have accomplished in centuries what took us millennia. They have defied expectations at every turn, and they have done so without our guidance. Do not mistake you for weakness, advisor. It is the young who shape the future." The advisor bowed his head, cowed by the force of Zalrith's conviction. The others remained silent, their protest stifled by the weight of the Admiral's authority. "Admiral," Trellick began cautiously, "if humanity accepts our offer, they may one day surpass us. Are you prepared for that?" Zalrith allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smile to cross his face. "If they surpass us, Commander, it will be because we failed to grow alongside them. Let that be our motivation, not our fear." The emissaries were dispatched, their sleek vessels slipping silently through the void toward Earth. On board, carefully crafted messages extended the hand of friendship, offering humanity a place within the Dominion's vast network of worlds. It was a gamble, a calculated risk that could either unite two civilizations or plunge them into a conflict neither could survive. On Earth, Lucas sat in his small room, oblivious to the storm his actions had unleashed. The simulation had been just another game to him, another chance to prove himself. He didn't know that his performance had captivated the most powerful figures in the galaxy, or that his name was now spoken in hushed tones aboard the Zenthree's greatest warships. To him, he was just a boy who loved to win. But to Zalrith, Lucas was the embodiment of humanity's potential, a symbol of what they could become. The Admiral knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, betrayals, and battles yet to come. But for the first time in a long, long while, Zalrith felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. The Valkyrin stirred to life, its engines humming as it prepared to depart. Zalrith stood at the observation deck, watching Earth grow smaller in the distance. The stars stretched endlessly before him, cold and unyielding. But now, amidst the darkness, there was a light, a fragile, flickering spark that had the power to change everything.